Hey, welcome back to the Book of Dad Radio Show. I'm Dr. Robert Benson. As always, we want to thank God. Thank you, God, for everything that we do, our work, our families, and you make it happen because we all would be absolutely nothing without you. Book of Dad Radio Show. We got a fabulous guest today. We're going to jump right in because as usual, I'm hanging out with my main man, Eddie G. Eddie, how you doing today, man?
Doing great, brother. Doing great.
That's good. Engineer extraordinaire, and as we do this show, is going to share a bunch of new venues that we're using to lift, if you will, or increase our listenership. And we got plenty of people checking us out, but we want to take it to the next level. And we're going to do that because we have great guests like the one we have today. Today, we are honored, seriously honored to have someone from the legitimate heritage of Black history. So without further ado, I'm going to allow this outstanding, highly educated and motivated individual, Dr. Evelyn, and I'm not even going to say her last name because I'm going to ask her to do that so she can tell you who she is and why we are so very, very excited to have her here. Dr. Evelyn, good evening. How are you?
Greetings. I am excellent. Thank you. And it is a joy to be here. Been looking forward to this. I'm so excited about the opportunity to come on. I'm always excited to be able to talk about my grandmother. I am Dr. Evelyn Bethune, and Mary McLeod Bethune is my grandmother. My dad, Albert Bethune, was her only child. And so we carry a lot of weight in terms of making sure that the legacy continues. My oldest brother, however, tried to help us out because he had 13 kids. So he figured
he made up for it.
Exactly. And 9 of them are boys. So, we will definitely have Bethunes around for a while. Wow. So that was something that we laughed about. Plus, he was 32 years older than me.
Oh, wow.
And my dad, when I was born, my dad was in his 50s. He was born in 1899. My grandmother was born in 1875. And so by the time I was born, he would have been my grandfather, but he married my mother. And she was 20 years younger than him. So they started all over again. Wow. And I have twin brothers after me and a baby sister. So the legacy continues.
Well, so it sounds similar to me. I have an aunt that I actually graduated from high school with, which is amazing, But so did you actually meet your grandmother?
I did, which really dates me. I was 3 years old when she passed away. But I knew her as my grandmother. I didn't know her as the American icon, and world personality. And she did grandmother things. That's what I remember about her personally. But of course, I have a host of historical stories from both my dad and my oldest brother, who, as I said, was 32 years older than me. So he knew her very well.
Absolutely. Well, the thing that I find very, very interesting about her after doing my research on her is that not only was she huge in the development of women and women's presence, voting, suffrage, and education, but I learned also today that she was very, very big in the insurance industry. Talk to us about that.
Well, my grandmother believed in investing, and she believed in owning your own stuff. Her thing was, you knock on the door, they don't want to let you in, so you build your own. And you don't stand there and beg and plead and finally force your way into a space where you really still are not wanted. You create your own space. And part of that is investing in your own community. And so that's what she did. She invested in Black banking. She invested in real estate. She invested in stocks and bonds. And she was part owner of Central Life Insurance Company, which was very big during her time, her lifespan, along with Atlanta Life Insurance, which is still around today.
Interesting. And the thing that I find even more interesting about her is the geographic space she covered during those times, because, she actually ended up in Florida, and we're talking about things that she actually did here in Atlanta. did she ever talk about, or were there any stories, if you will, about how they were able to get around for so freely and at such a time when obviously transportation was nowhere close to what it is right now?
Well, the beauty of us in those days was that we took care of each other and
Yes.
we looked out for each other. And so it was a very different time and space that she was able to navigate in. She, as a kid, of course, they walked everywhere, whether it be to town. My great grandparents, Samuel and Patsy McLeod, owned 5 acres of land that they farmed in Maysville, South Carolina, which is where my grandmother was born. And after enslavement, my great grandfather was able to bring all of his children back together. And there were 17. My grandmother was the 15th of 17 children, and she was the first to be born after Emancipation Proclamation. So she
Wow.
was the first child born free in their family. And that carried a lot of weight as well because she was born into a free space. And the beauty was that my great grandfather always had a free mind. He purchased my great grandmother in order to marry her because the person that owned her didn't believe slaves should get married. So he worked an additional stint of time and space in order to be able to purchase her. Convinced his owner to buy her. And so during the day, he was a woodworker because that's what the gentleman who owned him was a woodworker. And that was my great grandfather's craft. And then on the side, he was a blacksmith.
Wow.
And that's how he earned the money to purchase my great grandmother. And he
Very
did that
interesting.
for 4 years in order to earn enough money to get her. And I tell people, I said, when I think about that, it tells me that he must have loved her a great deal because it
gonna
wasn't
say
something
that.
he had to do.
Absolutely.
And he was determined that his family would be together. As much control as he had during that time and space. And it speaks volumes to the mindset of many people who were enslaved during that time. People can put shackles on you, but they can't enslave your mind unless you let them.
And that was an idea that he had, as you said, your grandmother had, not to be held by boundaries, whether it be slavery, whether it be economic conditions. Your mindset is something that no one can control. No one can take that away
Absolutely.
from you.
That's right.
So
Absolutely.
we're just honored that she was able to take that mindset and put it in the minds of so many other people to help us progress to another space. How do you feel the way society is now? It seems like we're taking a few steps backwards. How do you feel
I
we
think
need
we've
to take a
taken
look
more
at
than a
that?
few steps. I think we've done it falling back into the ditch. But and I say that because we've become a very selfish and self-centered, society. It's all about me, my, and get yours if you can. And that was not the nature of our communities. I mean, there are always outliers. You can't say everybody did everything. But for the most part, we had a mindset of what I do is not just about me. It reflects back on my community. And so people dressed well. They spoke intelligently. They had a thirst for education. They wanted their children to be educated and to do better than they were doing. And they put boundaries in place. There were certain lines that you knew not to cross as it related to your parents, leaders in the community, a certain level of respect. And we've lost most of that. Almost anything goes today. And so when we do that, we look at it in terms of having freedom or a mindset to do as I please. But what it ends up being is chaos and anarchy, and there is no progress. So,
Absolutely.
as free as we think we are, we have all the technology in the world, and most people walking around with a $1,500 phone can't do anything but text message and do TikTok on
That's true.
it.
Well, that's a great point, Dr. Evelyn. Hey, we're at the Book of That Radio Show, and I'm Dr. Robert Benson with my main man, Eddie G, and we are talking to literal Black history heritage in Dr. Evelyn Bethune. When we come right back, we're going to continue picking her brain and find out a whole lot more. I'm sure there's some great stories she's going to share with us, and we'll be right back.
See why listeners from over 150 countries around the world follow the Book of Dad radio show. Join Dr. Robert Benson and Eddie G as they chat with special guests who share their stories and information that will change your life. Watch and listen on lifeandspiritonline.com or subscribe to the Book of Dad radio show on Apple Podcast, Spotify, iHeartRadio, or wherever you get your podcast. Brought to you by the NASCA Network.
Hey, welcome back to Book of Dad Radio Show. I'm Dr. Robert Benson. You can get us anywhere you get your podcasts, and we're going to talk more about some of the other venues that we share this show. Because again, we have great topics and great guests. As we do now, we are talking to the first granddaughter of Mary McLeod Bethune, one of the greatest women in American history, let alone African American history. Now, we may get off track here because there's a great movie out right now called The Woman King that celebrates women and powerful, strong women. And that is exactly what Dr. Bethune-Cookman was. So with that mindset, we're going to talk a little bit about feminism, and no offense, but women have contributed so mightily to everything that we're doing. Mm-hmm. We see them, and like this movie we just talked about, but we have a African-American woman trying to become the governor of Georgia right now. So let's talk about our stay, if you will, and how you see things progressing. Or are we on the precipice of a total change, or do you think that we're just going to level off? Or how do you see women in general in the future as far as politics and so many other things that we could talk about for days on?
Well, I take a breath because I'm one of those liberated women who truly believe that the greatest power women have is being women. And so when we try to take the place of a man or say we don't need one, I take issue with that. I think that God created us to support each other, and that we are strongest when we stand together. And so many times, I hear people say, I'm the boss. Well, that's fine. But are you going home to an empty, lonely house? That's just my position.
Right.
And I feel totally empowered. But I love being a woman. I think that, as my grandmother used to say, listen, you control the world. Women have children. Men can't do that. But women don't want to raise children by themselves. They need that counterbalance in order to have the best situation. And so, the power that women have, sometimes we think we have to be physically stronger. And that's not necessarily the truth, because I get more done just being a girly girl and having somebody pick the heavy stuff up than I do trying to drag bricks across the yard. So we just have to learn how to use the power that we really have. We'll get a whole lot more done. And even my grandmother, if people look at her pictures, she dressed well, but she always had lace. She had on pearls. She had coordinated everything. She loved nice clothes. And, she always had nice looking men around her. She was married. She married my grandfather, but he decided he didn't want her to do the thing she was doing. So they never got divorced, but he moved back to South Carolina. Mm-hmm. But whenever you saw her, She was not trying to pick up luggage and carry it anywhere. Okay.
Hey, is that where the term honeydew comes from? Honeyless, honeydew-less, or whatever it is?
Absolutely. Yes. Listen, we grew up understanding that you get more bees with honey. Okay. So I just think that we got this thing twisted, and we'll get a whole lot more done when we learn. And it's not about place. It's not, because my dad, when I was born, my dad had retired. So he was the one doing laundry and taking care of us while my mother ran her beauty salon.
Wow.
But she made him feel like a king. They never argued in public. She never disagreed with him in public. Now, what they did when they got home, and she said, now listen, this is really the way we're going to do this. And he said, okay, baby. You know, but that was because she was going to make sure that he felt necessary part of the decision-making process. And because of that, he would leap over a tall building for her. We've forgotten how to do that. And that's a large piece of how our community has become so dysfunctional. You know, we want to, I have friends, they want to argue about everything. If somebody says good morning, they want to say, no, it's not, even if the sun just came up. And so, you know, I don't see the benefit in that. I just think that, you know, and even in Woman King, women still knew how to be women. When she went to talk to the king, she gave him the greatest level of respect. And he honored her as his top warrior. You know, they understood what everybody's position was. And because of that, they could win.
Wow. You know, isn't that so apropos, though, if you think about it, because you were just talking about the family and the family structure. And it really just kind of boils down to not necessarily roles, but just harmony and the effective communication between people. I mean, if it's understood and it's communicated the way it should be, there'll never be any problems with it. But so let's talk real briefly about how you're using this foundation that you've been given that a lot of people would dream, you know, would pay millions for. How are you using that to parlay that into what you're actually doing now to help others?
Well, what we do, my grandmother's push and pull, her name is known. I have not lived, let me just say, I have not lived anywhere in the world where my grandmother was not known. And I've been to 7 foreign countries and lived in probably, you know, several different states. There's schools named after her in cities across this country. She has 2 statues in Washington, D.C. One is in Lincoln Park, and that was put there in 1975. The one that was just installed in the Congressional Statuary Hall replaces a Confederate general and represents the state of Florida. Even with DeSantis as governor, he couldn't stop that progression. So her power is legendary. She was an organizer of women, and that base, at one point, the National Council of Negro Women, which she founded, had 5 million women as members. They still have 2.3 million women today.
Wow.
They have sections all over the country and on the continent of Africa. They're in Nassau, they're in Haiti, they're in the Dominican Republic, they're across the world, and they're doing things. They're doing water projects where they're giving people pumps so they can have clean water. And they've been doing that since the 40s.
Wow.
That's not a new thing for them. And they were doing it in this country because in Mississippi, Alabama, Georgia, you know, Black people didn't have running water. And so National Council of Negro Women did projects across the South where they provided pumps for people to have fresh water. And we think that's a small thing, but even today it's a big deal. And if we don't believe it, go to Flint, Michigan.
Yeah, how about that? Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. It's an interesting thing, and at some point, we get ready to take a quick break here, but at some point there comes I don't know, maybe an apex, if you will, where a woman's power can be construed so much as emasculating a man, if you will. We won't get too far into that, but some people see that as an issue, and that's why you have these conflicts at times with families in various venues where people have to interact, and they don't see themselves as being powerful or in the exact role that they should be. But this is Book of Dad Radio Show. I'm Dr. Robert Benson with my main man, Eddie G, and we're talking to Dr. Evelyn Bethune. Doc, so much great stuff, and we'll be right back. We'll be right back.
You have something special. You have greatness in you. Hello, I'm Les Brown, Mrs. Mamie Brown's baby boy. I want you to spread the word to your family members and friends to listen to LesBrownGreatnessRadio.com. Absolutely. And let me share with you why we're going to be focusing on positive things, because whatever you focus on the longest becomes the strongest. And now more than ever, when the suicide rate has increased over 33%, when the suicide rate of young children between 5 and 11 has doubled, people feeling hopeless and stressed out and powerless, we need programming that can bring out the greatness in them. And that's what we will be focused on. When you listen, it will be an experience that will transform your life. LesBrownGreatnessRadio.com. That's my story, and I'm sticking to it.
Hey everybody, welcome back to the Book of Dad Radio Show with Dr. Robert Benson and me, Eddie G. And today we have our most powerful guest, Dr. Evelyn Bethune, and she is really giving us a lot of insight on how she is contributing to the progress of women. And a question I have for you, Doctor, is, today men are making decisions that women should be making in politics. And for some reason, society thinks that women shouldn't be in charge. And we both know that that's wrong. And what is it that you're doing right now with the legacy of your grandmother and the things that you've been accomplishing? What is it that you're doing to make sure that this trend doesn't continue?
Well, I would say, unfortunately, we are still dealing with the issues that my grandmother dealt with as, a woman, because when she first came on the scene, of course, the reason that she and her husband separated was because he felt that she needed, once they got married, she should be at home cooking and raising their children. And her mission that she felt God had placed her in was to educate our people. And she did that through a prison ministry as well as starting a college. It was started as a school to train girls in Daytona Beach. She started in Daytona because it was where the railroad was coming through, and most of the workers, of course, who were building that railroad were Black, and their children had no school, and most adults in that community could not read or write. And so that was the place that she chose to start, and the only land they would sell her was the garbage dump. And so she said, fine and dandy. And that garbage dump is now worth something like $100 million. And she bought it for $250, paying $5 a month, to get it. And utilizing the resources that were there, like whatever was in the dump turned into a desk or a chair or, paper to write on. They improvised. But that whole thing of women not having a voice is something that this country's been stuck in, and that's pushed and promoted by white males. If you look at who's making these decisions, and some, a couple of Black ones, like a Supreme Court justice that doesn't understand that he is a Black man, even though he's married to a white woman. So,
I wonder who you're talking about there.
Well, anyway, that one. And so, when people start to tell you, I have yet to hear them make a law that says that a man can't do certain things as it relates to birth control. It's all centered around the reproductive organs of women. And that is because white males are making those decisions, and it is a method of control. It always has been. And until we vote them out of office, it will continue to be so. And so we have to vote. And I make phone calls every day reminding people to go vote. We send out thousands of messages weekly to remind people to go vote. That I don't care how angry you are, I don't care about all the stuff you're mad about, go vote.
Exactly.
Because otherwise you don't have a voice.
Well, let me ask you this, Dr. Bethune. Do you know of any horror stories that she may have faced? Because I mean, back then, everyone was always, an angry person away from a catastrophic situation occurring. Anything you want to share with us that you know about?
Well, I can tell you a couple in Daytona Beach. You know, we could not go to the beach in Daytona, the world's most famous beach, and Black people could not cross that bridge without permission, especially after 6 o'clock or sundown, unless you worked over there. And so she didn't argue. She went 25 miles down the road and bought 5 miles of beach for Black people to be able to go to the beach so they could have beach houses. That's who my grandmother was. She did not believe that, you had to be insulted or whatever. She made a way for you to have what was needed so you could enjoy yourself and enjoy your life. The Klan also came to Bethune-Cookman and threatened to burn it down. And they came, of course, in the middle of the night. Well, she turned all the lights on and the students started singing, and the Klan went away. Because the Klan operates on fear. They weren't afraid. And so she won that battle as well.
Hey, but to kind of follow up on, I'm sorry.
To that.
Okay, that's a great story, but I want to follow up on the great question that Eddie talked about as far as decisions being made for women by men. Now, we have a new Supreme Court justice, that's an African-American woman.
Yes.
Do you see, with her being on the bench now, that there'll be a revisiting, if you will, of this issue that we're talking about or alluding to?
I believe it will be revisited because she's going to write some minority viewpoints based on her experiences and her knowledge base, because she is an incredibly bright woman.
Yes.
And she's not afraid either. And I believe that if we can vote the right way, some of those folks are going to not be there in the next 5 years that are on the Supreme Court. Time is going to take care of some of them.
Well, I don't know. Some have been on there for a very long time. It might be the natural way that they go, but I mean, several have been at it forever. Well, we've talked enough about history and things like that. What we really want to focus on over the next few minutes is you. Talk to us about your practice, what you're doing, and how we can get in touch with you, all of that stuff. Talk to us.
Absolutely. Well, I have a book. It's called Bethune, Out of Darkness into the Light of Freedom. And it is about the life of my grandmother and growing up as her grandchildren. I run the History in the Making Coaching Network, and we have a project called Greatness DNA. And that's where we talk about the greatness that's on our DNA. And you can reach me on Facebook at any time. Dr. Evelyn.
You know we are going to reach you. And we're going to definitely have you come back, because I really want to dig a little bit deeper into the issue that Ed brought up. I think that's a great question, Ed. I mean, just the fact that people are making decisions for folks and they have no idea what it is that the individual is going through or why they would make a certain decision at a certain time. So I think that's outstanding. But
the point that we miss is that they don't care what the reasoning is. See,
that's a very, very good way of looking at it.
Because we think logically, we try to put logic to foolishness. It's about control.
Exactly.
And that is a male, white male in particular position. It's about control.
I was going to say, but that you said that they don't care. I was going to say they do care, and I was going to say about that very thing, just being in control. That's what they care about. Yeah, I mean, and that's why. Exactly. I mean, more than anything, up and down, that's all they really want to do is be in control. I mean, it's so blatant that they follow idiocy and lies and deceit just so they can stay in control. And that's a big
Yes.
problem for me. Well, Dr. Bethune, this is unbelievable for us. I mean, it's surreal almost that the fact that you're here speaking with us about such a historical figure who is your grandmother. We are really glad that you joined us on the show today, but I'm going to ask Ed to jump in and talk a little bit about the show and where we're releasing it and those types of things real quick.
Thank you, sir. Well, if you want to hear more great guests like this, and the Book of Dad radio show is growing and growing, and you can follow us now on Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, all of those at Book of Dad Radio. Also, you can go to the website. The new website is bookofdad.net. So if you want to reach out to us, you want to be a guest, or some great people that we should interview, just reach out to us there and help us to grow, because it's a family. And our job is to talk to great people who are doing great things. There's no nonsense. We don't care about silly things that are going on in the world. We want to make the world better. And that's why we have great guests like Dr. Bethune, and we appreciate you for coming on to the show.
Well, thank you. I was so happy to be invited. I really
We're happy to have
enjoyed
you.
Yeah, absolutely. But let me say this real quick about the Book of Dad radio show, because I really want Ed to know how much I appreciate what he does in the NASCA network, because I started this show years ago in different venues, and it has never flourished the way it is. And I just want you to know it's totally appreciated. And Dr. Bethune, we are so happy that you think this show worthy enough for you to get down and hang out with us for a little while. So that's a great thing. So thank you so much, both of you on those fronts. Okay.
Yes,
Well,
sir.
Thank you.
Come-
Well, I'm
Okay, no doubt.
not like my grandmother. I love hanging out with my people.
All right, cool.
We love it.
This is awesome. All right, well, listen, it's been the Book of Dad radio show. I'm Dr. Robert Benson with my main man, Eddie G, and thank you so much, Dr. Bethune. And I'm going to close out the show like I always do with a quote, and it's simply this: people remember you when you remember their name. Book of Dad radio show. Dr. Robert Benson.
Absolutely.
And we'll talk to you next time.